pictures all over everywhere. But anyway, let me kick this off. So I want to say again, I know I was talking, but I just want to say hello to everyone and welcome back to our Thursday MasterAdvisor live interview series. I want to remind everyone, like I do every week, that Speak Your View, which you can click into, should be right there on the top, is going to be your best viewing experience. And I also want to remind you that I'll be checking the chat as best I can. I promise I'll do my best, and I'll take questions as we go along. So if you want to drop in a question in the chat or a comment, don't hesitate to do it at any time. I actually have some from last week that we're going to use today. So even though they might fly by, they are very helpful, and I do appreciate them all. So before I get started with today's guest, I want to tell you all, for our next session, we're going to have Carrie Dyer, who's the Vice President of Talent Development at Brownell Travel. She's going to join us to talk about hiring and retaining talent. We're going to shoot the link out right after we wrap up here, so keep an eye out on that. And if you want to send me any questions about hiring or retaining talent, you guys all know my email, editor@travelmarketreport.com, and you can get me on Facebook, Daniel McCarthy, and it's easy to reach me there. Today, we're actually doing Facebook Live too, so anytime in the future, if you want to head over there, if you want to rewatch this on Facebook Live, you can do that too. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest. We've had really great guests on each of these sessions, and I truly feel lucky and fortunate to have everyone. And today's guest is no different. I think we've gotten a unique perspectives from people across the industry. We've had agency owners from major agencies across the country. We've had ICs, we've had supplier heads. And I'm very excited to announce that today's guest, Jennifer Donches, is another great voice to have on here. Jennifer is the president of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania's VIP Vacations. She's another guest where I could spend the whole time listing her accolades, but I'm going to keep it short. She's a regular on Fox Philadelphia's Good Day Philadelphia. She's the president of one of the top-selling agencies in the world for weddings, for sandals and beaches, and she's appeared on the Travel Channel and more. She's also a former member of TMR's advisory board, which is where I first met her. So it was great to to reintroduce myself to her this week. And yeah, I want to introduce Jennifer, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today's topic is going to be leadership, and this past couple of months we've sort of been through a lot of adversity, and I thought it was important to talk to someone about how do you lead, whether you have a big agency or small agency, or even if you're on your own through adversity. But first, I do want to ask you about what you're hearing from clients right now. We spoke earlier in the week, and you told me some pretty interesting stuff about how you're hearing that clients fall into 3 different buckets now. Can you talk to me about what those buckets are and how you're treating them differently?
Yeah, I believe in society, there are 3 sets of travelers. One is the traveler that really just wants to go out there. It doesn't really matter current conditions. They want adventure. That's what they're living for. So they're the ones that, for travel agents, we really want to try to reach those. The second bucket are the ones that like vacations, want to plan vacations, but might hesitate if things get a little tricky and sketchy out in the world. And then they're the ones that don't want to go on vacations. They would rather not travel, and they'll only travel if forced to maybe go to a destination wedding, or, if it's a family reunion. So, we're finding that bucket number 1 is already coming back, which is great news for agents. And we actually are trying to balance the world news to see where we can get them. We have clients who want to go places. And I know you and I were talking earlier, like there's only X amount of countries open right now that they can even go to. So I think that that's good news. And I think we'll start to see more and more of that, rather than just the cancellations or the postponements of trips.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling there's a sort of a massive pent-up demand, but it just depends on what's feasible right now. And I'm just curious, how are you speaking to clients about health and safety questions right now? There's a lot of people wanting to go somewhere, a lot of domestic travel sort of now it's the thing that people want to do. But I'm just curious, if someone had a question about health or safety, are you giving them any advice? Are you giving them any sources to sort of go through so they can look at what's happening and make their own decision?
For sure. We try not to inject our opinion. And more ask them what they're interested or worried about. If you're selling sun and fun, a lot of the airports and destinations have provided amazing videos for the safety protocols that they're doing, and resorts the same way. And cruise lines are also sharing news of what they're doing. So we try to share that with our our customers and try to relieve any stress that they might have, and just listen to them and be a voice of reason. Because sometimes it's real easy to get caught up in a lot of negativity. So we try to be a voice of reason and hope.
I think that's important to point out too, is that, I mean, we'll talk about that later in the call, I think, but the attitude people have talking to each other right now is just so important because of the amount of negativity out there. So now I want to sort of get into your career. I want to ask you about your entry into the world of travel. And I know you're known for romantic travel, for honeymoons and weddings and couples trips. I'm just curious, how did you get focused on that specialty? Was it an interest of yours? Was it something you thought you would do well with? Was it born out of necessity?
So it's interesting that we're talking about, this, because I was for several years a corporate travel agent and had a really good set of corporate accounts. And when crisis creates an opportunity for change, sometimes that's good. During 9/11, all of my corporate accounts decided not to renew their contracts. And where I was handling corporate travel for employees of different companies, they would also come to me to handle Disney vacations, or the executives would ask about incentive trips. And of course, I also got the honeymoons. And after 9/11, I was devastated. I remember it being December and contemplating taking a job as a receptionist in a doctor's office.
Wow.
And so when people say, oh, 9/11, well, it turned around really quick. I don't remember it that way. I was devastated and didn't see much of a bounce back until February. And that was primarily the honeymoon business. The clients that I had booked prior to 9/11 for honeymoons, they didn't care about what had happened. They are like, you really think something, some terrorist is going to go down to Jamaica? We're going to be okay. And so again, that's bucket number one. This was a priority. They were going to travel. So during that crisis, I was able to reevaluate and see what worked and pivot. And that was 2001. And by 2005, we were the #1 destination wedding group agency for Sandals and Beaches. So it wasn't like, oh, it's going to take a long time to rebuild. That was a blink to me in the 25 years of doing travel. And over the years, we've had to pivot again, because when Zika came along, brides, nobody messes with mama bear. And if they're worried about something happening to their baby or a potential baby, we would have weddings that would cancel, and the bride wasn't even thinking about getting pregnant for months after, but she was so worried about this virus. So we discovered that, some of the groups that we were doing, we made more money, more commission on some of our luxury and travelers. So we pivoted again and really started to market to very high-end luxury, exotic vacations, the ones that you really need a travel advisor to help with. And that was a very, very big move for us. And back in 2016, 2017, when Zika came out, our business was 80% romance. And I'm happy to say that after 2019, it's only 60%, because that shows that we have a little bit more diversity. And the luxury, exotic, high-end traveler is in that one bucket because they have the funds. They'll just move their vacation. They were very, very willing to do that during this crisis.
Yeah, and I think the key word, you used that word a few times, pivot, is that you've had to pivot a number of times. The fun in the sun destinations, they've been traditionally most popular for a lot of romance travel. But they've also been the destinations that have been impacted most by these major headlines over the years. You mentioned Zika, but we also got tainted alcohol stories. We've gotten a lot of we've gotten crime stories in a lot of these destinations.
The crisis in the DR last year.
Yeah, and I think there was something else this month in one of the major papers about another tainted alcohol story. But I'm just wondering, what's it like dealing with those kind of headlines? You built an agency, you have employees that depend on you. So as a leader, how is it dealing with adversity through those times?
So I think it's important to have an infinite mindset. It's real easy to be short-term focused. What is this going to do for us now? How are we impacted about it now? And, I can tell a story about September and the H word, which we don't refer to it. We don't like to use that big long word, but I would book destination weddings in the month of September, and son of a gun, every single time I booked a Beaches Turks wedding in September, it was like I jinxed the island, and the H word would come out. We don't even want to talk about it because we our body gets hives around our team. But guess what? We still book travel to the Caribbean in September. And I think it's because we know that, this season is half of the year. It starts in June and it ends in November. And the likelihood of a big storm coming through is statistically, it's reasonable to expect one, but during that exact week. And what happens is we have a game plan and we create that game plan. That's, it's going to impact travelers. We're going to have, loss of revenue. We're going to have to work harder, and we're probably going to have to console some of our clients, shift a lot of people. It's going to make news. And for the immediate, maybe even a year after that destination has recovered, people are still going to think that that destination was completely blown off of the map. But guess what? We still book travel for the month of September to the Caribbean and Mexico. So I think it's because we know it will end. It eventually will end and things do rebound. So during crisis, it's not naive to think that this is going to end. It's going to. You can look at history 100 years ago during, the Spanish flu, it ended. And we didn't have the advances in medicine that we have now. We didn't know about hand sanitizer like we do now. And so it's absurd to think that this is going to last forever. That's negative. We have to use an infinite mindset as leaders and say, well, it's going to end, and be optimistic. It's not being realistic and saying, well, this is the immediate, sure. But if you live with that negative all the time, you are not going to move forward, and you are not going to learn from the mistakes. You're going to be so focused on just getting through this. It's good to kind of step back and evaluate what could have been done differently. And I think that if you go back to 9/11, what I was very fortunate about is I was in-house in a big company, and I didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have a bunch of marketing that I had to pay for, or a commitment, for marketing. And I was very fortunate, and I stepped outside of it and I looked around at the travel agencies in our area that closed down because they weren't prepared for several months of not being able to pay rent, several, contracts that they had with, marketing initiatives and payroll. And I knew moving into an office, because we have a very large office in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, with a nice sized team. And I said, I can't let whatever that is, whether it's a 9/11 or a disaster in the Caribbean, affect my company. And so I squeezed every penny I could to save. And I'm very, very happy that for my company, we have a year of what we would have earned in commissions in the bank to protect us for something like this. And the only reason I was able to do that was because I didn't laser focus on not getting another corporate account. I looked around at what to do differently so this doesn't happen again. And I think that as leaders, it's to take a step back and realize some of the mistakes that might have been made. For us, something so simple as saying the words in contracts like, should you cancel or terminate? We've had to change that, because you know what? Most groups aren't canceling. The resort is closed. The destination is closed. So you can do all of that work and have nothing left there. So now we've changed it. Should your group not travel? Because that protects you right there for at least a deposit that you can keep for all of the work that you've done. Because that, I think, is the most crushing aspect of this, is all the work that has been put forth to just cancel or move. You're doing the work twice. In some instances for us, we moved people from the DR last summer, and now this happens when their wedding is supposed to be in April or May, and have to move them again. So I think not looking so focused on the negative and the short term, and trying to just step back and look broader at what the possibility is. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know what people will need, and they will need an advisor to talk through. So it's easy to say, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next. Right, but what do you know? You do know that people will travel again. You do know they're going to want a voice to listen to, because if anything is clear, it's that waiting on hold for hours is not good for anybody. And people that book direct with online tour, online OTAs, or even dealt with the airlines during this, we've seen them. They've come to us and say, we will never do that again. Please help.
Yeah, there's nothing pleasant about being on hold and having that that background music playing in your phone for 3 or 4 hours, just trying to get your money back too. And I think it's, again, this is the time where advisors can show their worth. But I want to touch on something you did mention. You mentioned you have a big agency, you have staff, you have employees. You spoke about what you wanted to do with how you approach your clients during these times, but I'm wondering, how do you motivate your staff during these times? I mean, I remember when this initially hit, there was a ton of headlines about unemployment, about the travel industry in particular. I'm wondering, how do you communicate this kind of news to them? And then how do you communicate a game plan to them that you guys are going to take to move forward? And I'm wondering, like, you also spoke about questions you're getting, and I know a lot of times we can't answer them, but how important is it to give some kind of answer to a lot of those questions?
So I think that the key is to be calm. Anxiety and stress of the unknown can make you have irrational thinking and make poor decisions. So it's good to have a clear head and make calm decisions. And I think clear communication, I've always said a partial answer is better than no answer. So it's good to, in times of uncertainty, to be very clear and ask for the well-being of your team and your clients, and just ask how they're doing and relate to them as people, not a paycheck or a bill that's coming through, and care about them. Their priority. There's studies that show that, sure, your customers have to feel like they're a priority, but the people that work for you have to feel that even more. It has to almost be a 51% team knows that you value your employees to the 49% of the clients that feel the clients come first. And if it goes to the other way, you won't inspire your team, because the message will be, we care about our clients more than we care about each other. And at the end of the day, they're the ones sitting with us. They're the ones in the trenches. And that's something else that I've had to do. I do marketing, and I do work with brides, and I do run my company, but I've not been in a customer service role where people have had a problem and need to speak to the manager. I'm not the manager. I have an office manager, we're not big enough to have a customer service department. So I realized that my team was, dealing with not only the disappointment of losing business, of all the hard work that they've put forth, but they're also getting irate clients who might not understand that their insurance didn't cover this, and they just want to talk to somebody. And I put my boots on and answered people, and I don't know if it was because they got to talk with the president of the company, but in every single scenario, it turned everything around. And so my team no longer had to deal. I just, we were all working remote. I just say, if you have an irate person, give me the background and send that to me. And I think during this crisis, I actually communicated with my team more than when things were going, well, during the day. See them, you say, hey, just touching in with how are you doing? How is your family doing? How are you handling working alone? I have some people that are not married and they're working by themselves at home when they're used to being in a team. So just knowing that they care about you, but also being clear, and clear is kind. On March 12th, I could hear, this was before we were told to move, we're not essential. And so I could hear my reservations team repeating the same message on the phone. And one of them got off the phone and said, I should just record this and put this on record, because it's the same message. And I said, well, why don't I just do a video and put it on our Facebook page? And it wasn't rehearsed. It was just off the cuff in one take. And within 24 hours, it had over 5,000 views, to which other agents actually shared it. Competing agencies shared it because the message was clear, and it also brought some humanity, because I think people have to, for all of this that's happened, they have empathy now. Somebody's been affected, whether it's by the actual, illness, by their job loss, not being able to be around maybe their parents, having to now, homeschool kids and work. They have great appreciation and empathy for teachers. Yeah, I read a joke and suddenly spankings were valid in school again, like that. Because you start to put yourself in their position. And I became much better at customer service. And I'm happy about that, but I was not above that. And I think as a leader, we need to show our team that we can get in with them, that we're not just giving directives, we're pulling them along with us, and that they see that. And I think that that's probably the best thing that we can do, is be very clear and show that we don't know, and be human.
Yeah, I'm curious you spoke about how important the communication was with your team during this time, and also how you spoke to them maybe more often than you did when you guys were in your office. But I'm wondering, what kind of questions were they asking you? Or was it more of you asking them? Was it you trying to get information and support them? Was it them asking you things? What kind of questions were they asking you? And then what kind of support could you give them?
So, some of them were dealing with mixed messages from different brands, being told one thing, and then when it comes time to make a cancellation or a change, it not being the right way, being frustrated with hold times, having clients who were, difficult to work with, or just asking what the best scenario might be for them. Should we play that game of chicken and wait till the airline cancels, or should we cancel because the client knows they want to cancel? What's the best thing to do? And just giving that advice, because when you are working at home, if you're used to working side by side with people and bouncing things off, you start to question the decisions that you're making. And so they would ask me advice. They would text me and say, what do you think we should do? And then they've asked me to step in, and I've had to send some, emails and make some appointments with some top executives to say, like, this is not right. It's not working. And, as a key account, we need things to be different, because I'm sure you want to look back at this and think that your company did really well to support travel advisors, and just have a rational conversation to try to make it better for everyone.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned before is that having your video shared by competing agencies, I think is really a feather in your cap. If you're putting out marketing and it's good enough to sort of calm people down, or give people any kind of guidance, and it's good enough for your competitors to use, I think that's something you should be pretty proud of.
Well, we're in this together as advisors. I always say a rising tide raises all ships. So if the message is uniform from all advisors to, postpone a trip, or reach out and don't cancel for 6 months from now, things are fluid. That's a word we've been using all the time. And the goalpost keeps on moving. We thought that come the end of June, people would be traveling all over. Now we're Googling what destinations are going to be open in September. So, also trying to put that empathy out there, to our consumers, that we're human beings and we're doing the best. And, for most consumers, they don't know we get paid after people travel. That was eye-opening to a lot of people. And then they start to say, oh, you mean you're not getting paid? So I was happy to do that. I was also encouraging other agents to do that on their own Facebook too, so that they could be the voice for their company.
Yeah, so one thing I just want to say to everyone, Jennifer mentioned sort of getting paid after we travel, and I know there's been a lot of questions sent to me about cancellation fees. We're going to cover that in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a couple of people on. We're going to talk about specifically about fees you can start charging to your clients. So Jennifer, you spoke about the guidance you gave your clients. You spoke about the guidance you gave to your employees and your advisors. But I also want to talk about you internally with all this kind of stuff. how do you deal with the emotional toll that these kind of news stories have on you personally? I mean, whether it's the hurricane season, a few years ago, we had that massive hurricane season, I think it was 2017, whether it's COVID, whether it's any major event that you think is going to significantly impact your business and maybe impact your company, how do you deal with that internally? And I mean, what is your thought process when one of those headlines come up?
So, I said a while ago on a Facebook post that, the point of the news is to make you watch more news. And our brains are hardwired to look out for negative and attack. It's like from the, caveman time, somebody has to stand watch for a threat. And so it's real easy to get sucked in to a news story, and cable news makes it 24/7. My gosh, Twitter makes it at the touch of a button that you can see what you want to see. So as leaders, we have to calm our brain and clear our minds and not get obsessed with the negativity, because that can directly relate to how we manage and lead. So I try to only look at the news for like 20 or 30 minutes. I try to be balanced about it, because it's crazy. One station can, say that this happened, and another station can say this is happening. So try to be balanced about it, and take it with a grain of salt, always knowing that this will end. And I think that that's kind of been how I've run my life during crisis. Crisis in Greek is translated into sift. And when you think about sifting, you think about it leaves what's important. All the other stuff kind of gets pushed aside. And, when you think about what's important right now, it's the well-being of your employees, the people you love, your health. You have home, you have food, and then you start to appreciate it. And gratitude just makes you want to get up every day and do more for others. So I think that crisis presents an opportunity, not only for change, but to realize what's really important.
I mean, is there anyone you lean on when things get particularly sort of overwhelming, or is there anything or any activity that maybe takes some stress out of your life? Because I can't imagine the kind of toll a lot of these news stories, I mean, especially when you're selling the kind of destinations you're selling, could have on you.
So, I have a great family, but my personal kind of thing is humor. I really, and irony, so I like humor. And my daughter is going to be 24 years old, and she actually worked for a resort brand for a while, and now she works at VIP. And during this kind of stay at home, be safe at home, I got into watching TikTok videos.
I don't know why I mean, TikTok's a weird
platform.
Funny. Yeah. They are funny.
And I've been able to kind of interject some of the humor into what we're seeing. I know some other advisors go and post some memes on their Facebook page, and you think about it and you're like, what are you going to tell our grandchildren in years to come about what happened? And if you make it a little bit less doom and gloom, I think that helps for sure. And, somebody very wise told me, what's the worst that can happen? And, stress is always about the unknown. But when you start to ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? If you can get by the worst, you will make it through. What's the worst? We have to shut our business down. Well, that's going to suck, but you're not dead. What's the worst? We may have to get a different job. You're still alive. When you start, that's devastating. For me, what the worst would be was that we wouldn't send people on amazing vacations. I miss traveling myself, but is that really what's going to make me not get up in the morning? No. So there's, asking yourself that question, and then of course, trying to lean on some humor too, I think can help.
Yeah, I think, you might get. I mean, I saw some of your Facebook videos, and were you guys doing TikToks?
Yeah.
Some of them are really good, and it seemed like you're getting a ton of engagement on them too.
Yeah, they went travel agent viral, which I don't know. That might mean you get like 10,000 views or something. But no, I think when people realize you're a human being and what we're dealing with, they can relate. And, you know, in a very kind of ironic way, I shared on one particular video, I shared that we're not making any money. You know, unlike running a hair salon where you're told you're not essential, you go home, you're staying at home. You can watch Netflix, you can, you know, do what you need to do, maybe even collect unemployment. For many travel agencies, agent owners and employees, we've come home and we're working harder, and we're getting yelled at, and we're not making any money. So, you know, all of those things. And one of my videos, I said, and as soon as travel's open, and then music came in, I said, you'll never see me again. And I had my suitcase and I like left, because that's how travel advisors feel. We're in mourning for not being able to get on a plane. Like, you know, I actually miss the 3 a.m. wake up calls now. I used to dread them, but now I appreciate them so much, because that was a signal that I am going someplace wonderful. And so those helped create a little bit of levity in a very sad and depressed time for our industry.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm absolutely longing for a 3 a.m. alarm clock to go off one day so I can make my way over to the airport and, you know, rush through security, and see what the new experience is like. I'm excited to see what the new world is like travel. I mean, you mentioned sort of what's the worst things that could happen, and it seemed like you were getting at, you know, how you put things in perspective. And I think that's important for everyone to know, that putting things in perspective is going to be one of the most important things, especially combating the fear of uncertainty. I know you've had some personal battles along the way, and I want to see if, you know, if your story helped put a lot of this stuff in perspective.
Yeah, I think, you know, I had a lot of people reach out to me in like April and say, geez, Jen, like, how are you doing this? It's just another blow. Because last July I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and in October I had a double mastectomy followed by radiation and chemo. So, you know, then you come back to work and you're like, this happens. But I think it's my view that crisis last year put in perspective what's really important. So this is just a blip. You know, we'll get through this. It will rebound. It always does. The things that we talked about, 9/11, swine flu, Zika, you know, the DR crisis, you know, the H words, we always get by, and it always comes back. Even if you look at history with the stock market, those that patiently just waited, it came back. So I think in dealing with a health issue, you say like, and I was worried that a bride might cancel her wedding. No, that's not what's important. It's taking care of yourself. And through all of this, the humor has been that I became vegan, plant-based.
Oh, really?
Plant-based, I like to say.
Yeah.
So I insist that this wouldn't have happened if everybody was plant-based, because nobody would have eaten a bat, and we would not be in this situation. And I try to use some humor with that, to which my kids always say, well, if we have a food crisis and we have to resort to cannibalism, you're the closest thing to grass-fed. So we just keep going back with the sarcasm, but you know, we will get through this. And we will cope in different ways, but we'll wake up, you know, at the end of this, and we'll be so much stronger. Because I know, not just going vegan, but, you know, I changed a lot about even exercise, and I always felt that I was in shape, but now really focusing on reducing some stress and clearing your mind is so important. So I come out of this vegan, don't drink, and, you know, am doing a lot more in terms of physical activity. I think those that survive this, the fittest, the strongest, we will be stronger and better for it when it's all over.
I do have to say that your attitude is very admirable. I mean, I can't imagine having like a personal crisis and a professional crisis at the same time. So I think you're inspiring a lot of people right now. I just want to remind everyone, drop your questions in the box. I only have a couple more for Jennifer, and then we'll take whatever ones you have on topic or off topic. But I mean, we are talking about leadership, Jennifer. And I mean, I've spoken to a lot of advisors about their careers over the last 3 or 4 years since I've been with Travel Market Report. And it seems like there's a lot of advisors who have gone from working in an agency to being home-based, and then maybe getting some ICs, and then suddenly without them sort of realizing it, they're in charge. I just want to talk about this. I want to talk about this conversation. Like, how important is it not just talking about leadership right now, but actively taking steps to improve your leadership abilities for when you do find yourself in a leadership situation?
I think this is something that our industry is in desperate need of. You know, there's 120,000 travel advisors in North America. 84% of them are women. And yet only 14% of women are in the C-suites and leadership positions in travel companies. And we are the ones that are selling travel. You know, to me, that's very much kind of like a pimp and his prostitutes. So I have tried to, you know, go to conferences, and you take webinars, and there's just no direction on how to lead. Even if you're thrown into it, there's really no rule book on what to do. So you learn from your mistakes. And I think specifically for women, we are very protective of what we've built. And that's the good old scarcity tactic that we've used in sales for a long time. There is only 2 cabins on this cruise left. You better buy. When you are on a board, or you're in an executive team and you're the only female amongst 9 men, you do not typically share with other females because you're worried about yourself. And I'm very, very blessed to have some amazing females in other leadership roles in other travel companies. And in 2018, we just came together and said, like, you see each other at an event or something, you spend 15 minutes and you want more. So we developed the Female Leaders in Travel Conclave last year. We had 22 women attend for this 3-day event. And those 22 women represented companies with over 660 million in annual sales, 22 women. And we came back from that changed, like, for the better. So inclusive. I think that they have truly helped me through this entire time. We shared information on how to get a PPP. We shared regulations that the credit cards put out there for chargebacks. We, you know, have helped cheer each other up. We've talked about layoffs, and they're just such an important support system that we said we have to have it again. And so this year there are 40 women attending the October conclave, and over $1 billion in annual sales. And what's so surprising to me is, even though this was called the Female Leaders in Travel Conclave, it was basically female leaders in travel agencies. And I have had VPs from cruise lines and resort brands that have said, we would like to come to this, and not as a vendor, but as somebody that wants to harness some leadership skills. So it's clear to me that as a whole, our industry needs some guidance in how to lead and lead effectively. And that doesn't mean that you talk down to people, because that you won't get them to look up to you that way. It means to talk with your people and guide them and, you know, care about them, but we need the advice of each other. And I am so happy that I have this support system. And I think the industry needs more of that, and for men too.
Yeah. I want to touch on that. I mean, I think the support system is unbelievably important. But I want to ask you, because you spoke about how you sort of started your career outside of corporate travel. And did you find yourself suddenly a leader, even without your agency, like maybe inside your community, inside your travel community? Did you find yourself suddenly in that position? And what kind of process was it like to deal with that and to build these skills that obviously you have right now?
Well, sure. Even if you take on an assistant, you're a leader. Even if you have 2 ICs that are working with you, you're a leader. Before you know it, you blink and you have a staff. You know, you have to train a manager, you know, or you rise up the ranks within your company. You were a great sales agent. Now you're a manager. Now you're, you know, an executive, you know, and all of a sudden you start reading books and try to apply it. And different industries, it's different. They might, I have friends that I've gone to networking events with people in real estate or insurance sales, and it's not the same. But what is apparent is that there needs to be some direction for females to be more inclusive and sharing with their wisdom, because I've got 25 years of it, and never before did other women come to me and ask me, how do you handle this? It was almost like, we don't talk about that. We can talk about a tour operator, we could talk about a cruise, but not how do you handle maybe an HR issue, or how do you deal with a work-life balance, or maybe even, when you have pictures of kids on your desk, and if it's a baby, you know how easy it is for somebody to just say, how do you leave them at home? That must be so hard. But if, as a man, you have a picture of your kids on the desk, it's not the same. You don't turn to a guy and say, how do you leave them at home? It must be so hard. So, we have to be more open about the struggles that we have. And that just makes you vulnerable, which is tough as a leader, because we want our leaders to be strong and always know the right answers. And we're human beings. So I think that having an inclusive kind of group of people that share and promote leadership and techniques is so important, which is why having this conversation today was something I was so excited to share. We're not talking travel. We're talking about how to inspire people that work around us. And again, you can be an IC and then have more ICs. You can be a host. You can be a manager. You can run your company. There is no rule book, but we definitely need the support and to learn techniques to do it better.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's something that's super admirable. Like, it is tough sometimes to ask those abstract questions. And I think a lot of those abstract questions are, how do I deal with this? Or how do I get over my anxiety about this issue or that issue? And I think knowing that, it's nothing to be embarrassed about is important, because people want to help you, especially if you're a part of their community or their group or your business. People want to help you. And I think it's strange, because I've been to a bunch of conferences with travel advisors, and I know there's competition everywhere, but it seems more encouraging in this environment than a lot of the other environments I've been into. I mean, it seems like a friendly competition, and it seems like advisors aren't afraid to share contacts and share tips and things like that. So I think realizing that it's not the worst thing to ask for help when you need help is important.
I agree.
We do have, we were talking about these leadership questions, but I did have one question from Robbie in the chat that you might be able to help with, Jennifer. He wants to know about the status of the Caribbean, Barbados and Turks and Caicos, what's going on with a 14-day quarantine after the islands opened up in July. And I know, again, you might not have the up-to-date information, and information might have changed by the time we started this call, but I'm wondering if you do have the information, and also if you don't have the information, what's your process like in gathering that kind of information to pass along to your employees or your clients?
So I actually refer to a Facebook group about Caribbean travel advisors, and they're very up to date with the news and information. Jamaica just opened up this week, and people were turned around once they got there because it wasn't clear that they had to fill out an online form ahead of time. Wow. So as advisors, we have to utilize the key relationships we have with, tourism boards or even on Facebook groups. For Barbados, it's a wait and see right now. I don't think they've announced anything. And remember, that changes too, because, St. Lucia, when they said that they were opening up, it was like everybody needed to have a COVID test beforehand. And then it was like, no, when you arrive, you're going to get it. And no, you need to. So it's changing all of the time. Even Aruba just came out and said that they're not doing any masks when you arrive, which is completely different to some other destinations. So I think it's just real important to always keep an updated, view on the current status, because this can air tomorrow or whenever you go and save it, and it can be completely different again. So use those resources. And I've turned to Facebook more often than not lately, because some of those groups are real up to date with things, and they answer questions right away too.
Yeah, it's the power of the community again. And I'm just so, what was this Facebook group name again?
I'm gonna look it right up on my phone, but I think it's like Caribbean sellers of travel for the Caribbean. But I'll get it to you right
And
now.
there are a ton of great Facebook groups for travel advisors out there, not only for sort of destination specific stuff like that, but for business building tips and the like. We have one on Travel Market Report we just launched a couple weeks ago. And if you guys want to be part of that, you can find that link through our Facebook page.
Yeah, it's called Travel Advisors Selling the Caribbean, and that's the group on there. And they're every couple of days they post up a new kind of grid of what places are open and what you have to do. They kind of put some canvas up there too about this is the process, so you can copy and send that to your client as well, which makes it real simple.
And I do want to plug, we are gonna be launching our own in a couple weeks, or maybe over the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that on travelmarketreport.com. Jenny just dropped the link for everyone who was curious about how you get to that page. We have a question from Facebook Live actually about romance travel. So Donna Greenwald wants to know, how do you get new business during this time for weddings and honeymoons when there's no bridal shows or events to market to at this time?
So that's a great question, because right now I think people with this current economy are actually looking at like, can I afford a wedding? So I think it's good to, very softly mention on your Facebook page or via Twitter or even LinkedIn the economic benefits of having a destination wedding. Also, a lot of states are limiting the amount of people that can attend, but you could book 100 people at a beautiful resort like the one behind me, LeBlanc, and there is no criteria or limitations to how many people can be in that event. So there's taking the positives of why a destination wedding is great. And that's something that we booked during this crisis, because sometimes brides are very infinite mindset. They think, in the end of 2021, this is not going to be around, so let's plan my wedding. We'll give our friends and family plenty of time to, save for this. So I think softly showing the pros of having a destination wedding is great. And then, if you have lead lists that you received from other bridal shows, just touch base with them. I can remember standing at bridal shows and getting brides that were planning their wedding 3 or 4 years from now. Like, I wasn't even sure I was going to talk to the same person, my husband. I wasn't even, 3 or 4 years from now, let alone plan a wedding. Yeah, but those lead lists are valuable. And if people are home still, reach out to them. They'll answer really fast.
I mean, I'm curious. You talk about the bridal trips and the groups you book for those. I mean, is that kind of trip, does that give you some solace in that that's something that a lot of these people are going to have way more difficulty canceling than a typical family vacation or even corporate travel?
Yeah, I mean, if they have a contract and your contract was very clear, we have found that something like 95% of our weddings moved. And for us, we had like a month of May, we could have 100 weddings. So this was, our April, May, and June represented something like 70% of our wedding season. So we've had to move a lot of weddings, and they were like, we have a forever fiance now, so let's move it to next year. They were very, very willing to do that. And back home for even our honeymooners, they've had to move it because their event space canceled, or it wasn't the wedding that they wanted. So it wasn't just the destination wedding. I think a lot of people were like shocked that a pandemic was actually affecting their date, but they, rolled with the punches and moved it.
So I want to tell everyone I dropped the link to Vacations by VIP into the chat. I know a lot of people were asking about sort of information about your agency and stuff like that. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's in there now before we close it up. If you want to jump on it, you can. And I want to say thank you, Jennifer. I mean, I know everything is crazy right now. I know your office actually opened back up because I don't think you've gone in yet, but I know you're anxious to go in. So I want to say thank you for taking the time this week to talk to me. I think you've given us a lot of valuable insight, and your personal stories is inspiring. And I hope everyone sort of got as much information about you, about leadership from you as I did. And I just want to say thanks again.
Well, thank you. And I see so many familiar faces. I know you said to put it in speaker mode, but Craig, hi there in California, and Karen and Vicky, I see so many, so many supportive people that have done so much for our industry over the years. This is a wonderful forum to go through some other issues that we face. It's not just a destination webinar, and I'm not putting that down at all, but this is about living and creating a tomorrow. And what I think Travel Market Report has been doing with these advisor series is just amazing. And I'm so honored to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I want to remind everyone, the full video will be available on our website soon. You can check that out. You can check that out on the YouTube page. Again, we're going to have Carrie Dyer next week. I'm very excited about that. So if you want to send me questions, you can do it through Facebook or email. And yeah, it's nice for everyone. Nice to see everyone again. And thank you all for coming and joining me today. All right. Have a good week.